25, but it'll probably take up $1 on that dollar off. Okay? Thank you for your time. It's not drinking. Possibly drinking.
$5,000 worth of silver per month. Today's standard, that'd be a little over $2 million. What they took out of this room right here, at today's standard, would be $6.175 million worth of silver. It was actually a very profitable mine. Now the miners that worked in this mine, they worked 10 hours a day, and they were not allowed to come out of this mine till the 10 hours was up, and a bell would ring to signify that. If a miner was to come out of this mine 1 minute before that 10 hours was up, he was fired. This is the part where I get my breath. The little pocket you see above the steps right here is nothing more than a locker. They had to bring everything down with them for the 10-hour shift they needed. Anything they didn't need, they'd leave stored up here, due to the fact they might not have any light left and would not be able to find their belongings. They dug these little pockets all through the mine at different entrances so that they would have a place to store their things. Sprechen Sie Deutsch für den Tor?
Ja, wir sind das Österreich. Sie sprechen gut Deutsch.
Okay, so you lost me, that's all I know.
Okay.
Well, I know something else too, but last time I said it, I got slapped in the face, but I don't say it. I think my brother taught me something I shouldn't know.
Please, come on, proceed. We have to check the helmet.
Yeah, I'm well diverse. I know Volkswagen and sprechen Sie Deutsch. Take pictures down here, the chances are you have to do some boards with those already. I don't want to explain it, we don't understand. Come on in. You're the next contestants on the Mine is Right. That might be wrong, I'm not sure right now. I'll tell you at 5. Now the difference between a hard stone mine and a coal mine. Has anybody ever been in a coal mine?
Sure.
You know the difference? Most coal mines are...
40 years ago. I know it's very huge.
Right.
The caverns are very, very large.
Right.
And I've also stayed in a gold mine, and so I know the difference a little
Right,
bit.
okay, but in a coal mine, it is usually in shell or slate, which if you put your hand on the wall, you can break the substance right off. And as you do, it releases methane gas. Therefore, in a coal mine, you could never work with a candle. If you lit it, you would probably kill everybody that was working on that shift. A hard stone mine, there is never any trapped gas. Limestone is too dense to trap any gas, therefore you don't have that problem, and that's how they got away with candles. The other difference is in a coal mine, you have to shore them up every 2 to 4 foot to keep them from collapsing. In a hard stone mine, the only place you will see shorings is where there's a fracture in the stone where 2 tunnels actually meet together. Now this mine stays 65 degrees all year round. Today the humidity down here is 0.01%. That's how it usually is. This is why I know you can feel your lips getting dry down here, and it happens to me every tour. By the time we're done, it sounds like I have the worst case of cotton mouth. That tunnel behind you right there is why it stays 65 degrees. That tunnel, if you were to follow it out of here, you would actually come out in a tough nut mine on the other side of the wash. This was the only safety that the miners had back then. But the reason it's actually there is when they first opened the mine, it was taking over 16 hours to clear out the dust in here for the next shift to come in. This was unacceptable for Richard, therefore he tied all 2,000 mines out in that desert together and over 300 miles of underground workings. He went out there, put vent shafts across the desert at different angles to capture the wind as it blew across. This actually gives us the flow rate in this mine that you cannot duplicate. You could put a 120-ton air conditioner on a mobile home and would not get the exchange of air that we get inside of this mine. This is how they were able to start mining again after setting off the dynamite in under 2 hours. It would be crystal clear down here. So they actually picked up a lot of time by doing this. Now, if you're a miner in this mine, you could get fired very easily for a lot of things because there was 60 to 100 people at any given time at the top waiting for the job. The guy that was in this shaft right here, you can see the silver vein right there, and it stops right there. He went 70 feet further back into the rock, setting up ore carts containing nothing but stone. At that point, the foreman was down here to relieve him of his job and bring a new guy. They didn't care if you sent stone up, but it had to contain 50% ore. They were steam-powered shafts, and they did not want any unnecessary burden on them. Now, this shaft here contained over $200,000 worth of silver.
That's too small. What?
Can you imagine living in there?
Tiny. Tiny.
What is it, Dustin?
Now, where you guys are actually walking in here is where the silver was. This whole tunnel here from the entrance where we came in to that little pole there had $200,000 worth of silver in here. That'd be a little over $6 million today. Now, what you're seeing in the wall right here is silver with manganese. The silver, like I said, is very texture-like, just like lava stone. If you come up here and feel, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about, and that is how they could actually follow the vein in the dark. Feel free to touch it, it won't bite.
So, in gold mining, it's going to be, and what's the depth of
The vein? Well, this vein, it went down below 700 feet, they don't know.
It's going down.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, yes, in gold mining you have only.
He had these miners get together down here, and they came up with a great idea, and not one rock ever left this mine again. They built these cribs that are behind you. They put them together like a stone fitter would build a wall without cement, and then put the pillars in place to hold it all together. This was the only time the foreman of this mine told these guys, good job. They were no longer putting any burden on the shafts to get it out of here, and it actually stabilizes the back of the mine, which is the ceiling. The other thing they did is they would bore out a shaft, get to the end of the vein, they would actually backfill that shaft with the stone, therefore there was no other rock sent out of here ever. This is why you don't see the big piles of rock behind this mine. There are no entrails left here. They figured it out, and they actually beat the owner and the supervisor at his own game. 1887, there was a 7.2 earthquake while the miners were down here working. They ran out of this mine because they thought it was collapsing, only to be fired. All 40 guys were fired because they left the mine before the 10 hours. The problem back then was our nice gentle 30 to 50 mile an hour Tombstone breezes would actually shift the shacks they lived in back then, so they didn't know it was actually an earthquake. They thought it was the wind. They sent their engineers down here to find out not one rock nor pillar moved in this mine. They deemed it one of the safest mines, and when we get to the end of this next tunnel, I'll show you how they know that. This next tunnel, though, actually had no silver in it whatsoever. This room up you're about to see is actually an ancient seabed. You'll see millions of years of sediment that have piled upon each other to make the wall you're about to see. This proves that even Arizona, as dry as it is, was under the ocean at one point in history. The only thing they found in here was seashells and fossils. We'll head up this way. Now the reason they know this mine didn't move, in 1879 they pounded these boards up into that crack. They knew if anything was going to shift or move, it would start in this room. This is where the sedimentary stone and the limestone come together. They knew if anything would shift, that board would fall out of that crack, which would mean get out of the mine. So if while we're here you see it fall, just let me know which direction you're going so I don't run anybody over. In 138 years they haven't moved an inch. And they actually had 2 earthquakes down here and nothing has moved. So they deemed this one of the safest mines in Arizona to be in. See, don't panic, it's all good. Anybody know what that green stuff is?
Copper.
Copper.
Close. Does it look like the stuff they put in jewelry?
Turquoise.
It actually isn't, but it looks like it. And the miners used to sell it to people as that. The biggest problem is this is the same white stuff I showed you in that geode at the bottom of the steps, but it does have copper in it. The problem they had with selling it to the people back then is raw turquoise. When you shine it up, it turns white. So if anybody tries to sell you raw turquoise that ain't shined, do yourself a favor and put it on your tongue. If it doesn't stick to your tongue, it is turquoise. Chrysocolla will stick to your tongue. No, you don't want to lick that, and I'll tell you why in the next room. There's 55 8-year-old boys that lick that. I seen where they was getting their snacks from, man. I tell everybody now, don't lick that rock. Now when the miners came into this mine, they had 3 candles just like this. Like I said, they never lasted 10 hours. If I was to turn the lights off down here, you wouldn't see your hand in front of your face. Don't worry, because the switch is all the way up on the steps and I'm not running back up there. But right about now, I usually light a candle, but I left my lighter up there and I'm not running back up there.
Here you go.
You got one?
Yeah.
Now picture yourself in pitch black, and that's the only light you have to work with. 40 miners down here at one time, but they were never allowed to work in the same area. They'd be strung out throughout this whole mine. So the most together would be 2 people, and you're still only working by this light. Now you know why that guy with the chisel is called a shaker. Why these guys didn't buy candles when they were up top is beyond me. I did research on it. They cost 2 cents a piece. This right here would look like an early 70s hippies loved them because I would have had candles everywhere down here. $2 you buy 100 candles. Come on now. But like if you're working down here by yourself, you're swinging this hammer right here. Little 4-pound sledgehammer. I know what you're thinking. It's hard to swing in the dark. It's not that hard because even if you can't see your other hand, your mind knows where it is, and you can hit that chisel every time without looking at it. You can go at different angles, and it's all because your mind tells you where your hand is. See, the problem with that is your buddy working with you is swinging this. I would have implied 3 parts before I even let him swing it the first time. I'd have looked him dead in his eyes, make sure he wasn't cross-eyed. I'd have went across the room, held fingers up to make sure he was not nearsighted. And that candle would have been planted firmly next to that chisel, because if he swings it the wrong way, you are now known as Stumpy, and you are no longer employable in the 1800s. I wouldn't have worked a 2-man team. I'd rather worked in the dark. Now, when we were down here doing tours, now we did find things that were from the miners down here. And it told us a little bit about their life and actually what they went through down here. Now, everything they needed for 10 hours, they had to bring it with them, their lunch, their drinks, their tools. Anything else they left up top because they weren't allowed to go back up till the end of their shift. This would have been one of their lunches. We're not sure what was in it because it's 138 years old and the label was worn off. But I'm sure 1800s, everybody in here knows pretty much what they ate. Beans. For some reason, they liked pork and beans, and that was pretty much the staple. That would have led to a very hostile work environment down here when you're walking around with open flame and a guy just ate beans. You would get plenty of light. But while they sat here in the dark eating this can of poison, they were actually really poisoning themselves with their lunch. The cans in the 1800s were sealed with crude lead. It's not like the lead you have for weights on a car or what you saw to your wife. So while the guys were here in the dark eating their lunch and hit that crispy bean, it was actually raw lead. This could have been what led to a lot of them dying off at early ages because miners usually old. The biggest culprit for it down here though was silicosis. As they drilled into them rocks, they would breathe high doses of silica dust. Back then they didn't have respirators or anything like that to stop them from breathing. What would happen, their lungs would fill up with silica dust and they would just fall over dead of suffocation. It was a horrible way to go. Now, every mine had a blacksmith at the mine to make them anything metal that they needed, whether it was a strap for a box, anything at all. And we know, we found this here drill down here, and we know that the blacksmith told them to throw it away. As you can see, there's not much left of it. You know, your buddy hits it the first time, the second time, you are no longer friends. He would have told him to throw it away before somebody gets hurt and made him a new one. The other one we found down here is actually called a moil, an M-U-I-L. This wasn't used for drilling the holes in the stone, it was actually used to remove the loose dirt and loose sedimentary stone off of the hard stone, because the miners were actually dulling out their bits, getting to the hard stone. Now the guy that lost this down here, more than likely he was out of candlelight and he laid it down and walked away and couldn't find it again. Now he would have had two options when he left the mine without this in his hand. The first one was pay for it. The second option is you're fired. Now here's where the whole trick comes into play. He had to pay for this before he got his pay, because if you're fired in this mine, you were not paid. So he had to throw the guy 2 bits, 25 cents for this chisel. I'm hoping he did. We have no clue if he did or not, but his misfortune was our gain. You see, now you know what a moil is. Not that you'll ever need to know that the rest of your life, but now you know. Some of the other things we found down in this mine were like this here. This is actual 1800s dynamite fuse. The fuse was made simply with twine, black powder, cloth, or a little bit of tar to keep it water resistant, and cloth tape wrapped around it, and then a kind of a thread wrapped around that to hold it all together. When they lit this, it actually burned at 45 seconds per foot. It's the same rate that fuse burns today. So they actually set some standards. The difference is today they do it by radio detonation, and they say that that is a lot safer than fuses. I say bull. Has anybody here drove down the road, seen a sign that says blasting ahead, turn off your cell phone? I must be the only one that drives down these roads. But if you ever see the sign, turn off your cell phone, you may save somebody's life. The reason is the frequency of your phone could be the same frequency as the blasting cap that guy's putting on 5 miles underground. You get a phone call, you answer it, that guy blows up, never makes it home. Thing is, you would never hear it or know it. So just if you ever see that sign that says blasting ahead, turn off your cell phone, now you know why. In every direction. They didn't miss anything. This guy spent 7 years, $150,000, and found absolutely nothing down here to show for it. However, he did use something down here and he left it behind, and the miners of the 1800s wished they would have had this unique object, but it wasn't invented till 1900, and it was the Carbide Lantern. It was the most simple thing to use back then, and it was cheap. You put carbide pellets in the bottom, water in the top. As the water seeps down, it makes acetylene gas. You hit the little striker right there, and you have a bright light to work with. There was 2 downfalls with this. If you've ever used a cutting torch for cutting steel, you have oxygen and acetylene. Until you turn the oxygen on, that torch will spit out a ton of soot. That's exactly what this lantern did. That was one of the downfalls. The other downfall is the lack of water down here. You do not have to worry about that for too long because the miners figured that out and they filled this up themselves. Just left puddles around inside of the mine. I know it smelled horrible down here because, you know, burning urine does not smell good, but they would have been able to see. I'm sure after about 4 hours down here, you can't smell anything anyway. Now we know them lanterns were actually used in here because it leaves burn marks on the stone. We actually pressure washed this room and it will not come off, so that tells me that guy spent entirely too much time standing there looking inside that little tiny hole. What he found in there is beyond me, but I'm betting it's still in there. The room you're in, again, is called the Rotunda. The miners got the namings as they came into them. This room actually started from the ceiling and actually the floor lower down as they went. When they first started it, it was through that hole up there, then where the light is, and eventually down behind you. This room contained $1.2 million worth of silver in 1881. Today, that would be billions of dollars. The marks you see in the ceiling are from where they drilled into the stone. That would be all that was left after they set the dynamite off. As you notice, them marks are not in one particular direction. They would drill in any direction they could to get the most effective bang out of it when they set the dynamite off. Any questions? We'll head this way then. Don't worry, he ate today. That last tour went up one person late. This room you guys are in right here is called the chapel. Why they named it the chapel is beyond me, because we know they didn't have time to come in here for Bible study. These miners were given 5 minutes a day to eat lunch. The foreman came in here at 5 minutes and 30 seconds and you were still eating, you were fired without pay. They were paying the top wages back then, and they expected every minute out of you that they were paying for. Now this room has a little more importance to it because this is the entrance to the next lower workings behind me. We can't take tours down there because of what's on the left-hand side of this tunnel. That is one of them ventilation shafts down there that will fall another 400 feet to the water. Don't worry, back in the day they went down 700 feet to the rocks. We know we lost miners in this tunnel due to the fact that them actual pits go right to left down this whole tunnel, all the way down. There's about 20 of them. At the end of your shift, when you're walking without a candle, feeling your way along the wall, that last step would have been a doozy, because back then you would have fell to 700 feet and hit rocks. It wouldn't have been a fun fall because you would have fell down there like a rag doll, bouncing off every stone along the way. They would have sent the guys in to find you, and they would have went, yeah, I think that red spot was him, but we're not sure. That would have been good enough. Now, they actually put an entrance up there to get the miners in here without disturbing the other guys, and it would have came down around there to here. The problem is they dug this shaft too close to the surface, and it actually collapsed on them. They were shearing it up. If you look right there, them boards have about a 5-inch gap between them on top here. They never got to finish putting the boards across as the stones came down. But he did shore up that post right there and started that one there, and it actually stopped about 39 tons worth of rubble from falling down any further. It's been sitting up there since 1879, and the only thing that comes past there is at 7:30 at night when the bats decide it's time to leave. And it's a wild picture when they do. I was down here the one night doing a late night tour, and about 35,000 bats decided it was time to leave the mine and go outside. I heard them making noise. I ducked down, and everybody looked at me, and I told them, I suggest you do the same. Just as everybody ducked down, about 35,000 bats came out of here. Now, this level of the mine, there was absolutely no rail down here or ore carts. Everything that was gathered at this level of the mine was put into burlap sacks by these little guys that were 5, 6, and 98 pounds and carried to this little shaft around the corner. It's called a winds and raise. It goes down to 700 feet, it goes up to 100, or up to the surface. But all the crystals are missing. You see a couple sparkle in there, but for the most part, all the 3 to 4 inch crystals have been broken off and removed. The thing they did not realize is, if they would have looked down this tunnel right here, they would have seen crystals all the way down it. This tunnel is actually a large geode. It is not a man-made tunnel. All the crystals sparkle nice and neat. My flashlight shines, or it would light them up big time. This is also the tunnel where you will capture the most orbs on film. I don't know why, but they seem to be there. I'm thinking because at the end of this tunnel, there is a man-made tunnel that went underneath the Crystal Palace. back in the day when they opened up, they actually found no whiskey in the saloon and could not figure out where it went. About a month later, they found 3 loose boards that dropped down in this mine, and I believe it would have been the 25% Irish workers down in this mine that took that whiskey. All it is just same thing you make drywall out of. He found about 8 pieces down here, not even enough for 1 sheet of drywall. Don't feel bad for him because he went about 30 miles away and dug a mine out there and is still producing today. So his grandkids are benefiting his hard work. This geode right here, when they blew up that stone right there, it actually never blew up. It stayed as a skeleton. But this one defied odds and actually started forming silver in the top of it. Watch this ramp go down, it does get steeper towards the ends. Have you guys been to Big Nose Cakes? If you go and Big Nose Cakes, go downstairs. I don't know if the guy's there right now or if they actually just tapped a picture of him, but a guy they called the Swamper in the 1800s. His job back then was to clean up the bars after they closed. Not only did he clean up the bar, but he actually dug a tunnel from that bar to this mine so he could clean out the bar. The tunnel is right here, and he dug it here himself. Now, one of these mornings when I know he's actually there and not the pitcher, I bought an air horn to see if he is awake. I will pop up through this mine and see if I can scare him. Now, he's recording it. He's going to use that as blackmail against me. But that is the tunnel that they drove from Big Nose Cakes to this mine. This is how they stole whiskey and beer and food from the saloon to bring it out of it. Now the guy's supposed to be down there, lately it's just been a pitcher. He's there to make sure nobody comes up through there or back down. That's why I bought the pyramid.
einen Tunnel getragen unter dem Saloon und hat dann Whisky geklaut, das lustig ist. Whisky, Schnaps.
Right around that corner that he lost. Now what the miners were looking for in this mine is exactly what I'm stepping on right here. This whole big pile that actually goes over that way too is silver ore. Now when I told you it looked and felt like lava stone, I wasn't lying. The difference is the weight. A piece of lava stone this size would weigh about 1 ounce. It's about 10 to 12 pounds.
So when they mined it, it really was kind of
Black.
a big chunk like
Right,
that.
when they blew it, got it better, it was only a few pieces of steel, it was 20. Hey, this is headache rock, and avoid that.
I don't think again, he was just joking.
Go ahead up. Thank you. You're pretty good, man. I ain't hear a peep out of you.